From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the morning news brief from Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. We begin in Chile, where Pope Francis will arrive in the coming hours on a 7-day trip that will also take him to Peru. The Pope left Rome on Monday morning. His visit is awaited with enthusiasm by many in Chile, where the Catholic Church has seen a decline by almost 30% in the number of believers in the last 12 years. It has also been rocked by accusations of sexual abuse. Catholic faithful held a vigil in Santiago de Chile ahead of the Pope's arrival. Some believers are planning protests throughout the visit against the Pope's appointment in 2015 of Bishop Juan Barros in Osorno, who is accused of protecting a pedophile. But they are also hoping Francis will take a stand in defense of the poor.
I hope that this visit from the Pope gives us a lot of hope, and that it brings us together as Chileans in faith, and that he will refer to important issues such as he has in other countries, like the environment and also justice. This is what we want to hear in the Mass.
A small fire at a statue of Christ in Peru was the result of a short circuit and not deliberate arson, according to authorities. The fire on Saturday caused minor smoke damage to the Christ of the Pacific. Last week, there were homemade bomb attacks on a number of churches in Chile, accompanied by threats to the Pope.
At about 5:45 a.m., there was a small fire, which has been brought under control. It affected the back of the statue. It was the smoke. I'll explain. We have checked, and there is no ladder at the base of the Christ of the Pacific. The local police force have guaranteed security measures for the upcoming visit from the Holy Pontiff. We have concluded that there was a short circuit due to humidity with the cables in the upper part of the feet, where there is a light.
Earlier, our correspondent in Chile, Francisca Castillo, sent this report on those 3 explosions at churches around Santiago.
This morning, 3 explosions have been registered in different churches located around the capital, areas known as Peñalolén, Recoleta and Estación Central. The explosions mainly affected the structures, the doors and windows of the buildings. Authorities did find pamphlets with messages that opposed the visit of Pope Francis in the coming days. The messages on these pamphlets also threatened the Pope directly, and some said, "Pope Francis, the next explosions will be for you." The pamphlets also demanded the release of the Mapuche political prisoners. Authorities have already started some investigation, and the Secretary of the Defense Ministry said that those responsible will be arrested. President Michelle Bachelet also referred to the incident, and she said that in a democracy everyone can express their views, but in a peaceful way. She also stated that security operations will be increased. Everything is ready ahead of the Pope's visit, and the police presence is strong on the streets because there has been another threat of another possible explosion at a church in downtown Santiago.
That was Francisca Castillo from Santiago. The Pope's visit to Peru will not be affected by the powerful earthquake that struck the southern coastal region early on Sunday. 2 people are reported killed, and more than 700 homes were affected by the 6.8 tremor in Arequipa and Ayacucho provinces. No tsunami alert was issued. The Venezuelan government and the opposition are to meet again on Thursday in the Dominican Republic, after their 4th round of talks ended on Friday without a final agreement. Both sides say that they are getting close to a deal that would promote peace and economic stability in Venezuela. Rolando Segura reports from Santo Domingo.
For the 4th time in 2 months, representatives of the Venezuelan government and its opponents have come to the Dominican Republic to seek an agreement for peaceful coexistence. Matters of urgency for the country were discussed behind closed doors in complete secrecy.
Everything is under discussion. We just have to wait and hope that all ends well.
But 2 days of discussion, even 12 hours a day, were not enough.
Although we have made great progress, some things are still outstanding, and these have to be discussed before we can deliver the package that we are talking about.
Next Thursday, they'll be back here face to face for a fifth round of dialogue between the government and the opposition.
We have agreements on a big majority of the points, and there are a few points still to be resolved, and I'm sure they will be resolved on the 18th of January.
If there's one thing both sides agree on, it's that they are getting closer.
There are truly important things we have made clear progress on, but there are other aspects that we still have to see how we can straighten out, while maintaining clarity.
There will have to be new consultations to overcome these differences.
We have a historic, moral, and ethical responsibility towards the country.
Among the knots still to be untied, there's whether or not to recognize the National Constituent Assembly, and whether to demand that the United States and the European Union lift their sanctions against Venezuela. The government insists on a rejection of any foreign interference.
We have seen members of the Senate insulting the Venezuelan opposition, saying it's falling apart, and we know the pressure that has been exerted to torpedo these talks, which the Venezuelan people see as chance for peace and harmony.
To keep trying to ensure that politics prevail over violence, in just a few days' time the government and opposition will be back here to face each other once again.
And Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro has summoned social movements and citizens to help draw up the new next plan, the Plan de la Patria, or National Development Plan. As a result, citizen assemblies have been set up across the country. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, went along to one of them.
On a sunny afternoon in the Primera Park of Caracas, locals gather for a meeting of particular importance. This is a citizen assembly. It serves as a space for political discussion, to encourage citizens to contribute their ideas and proposals for the government's new development plan to run from 2019 to 2025.
It is important because it is a way to face the aggression against the country, from the internal and external financial and economic factors that threaten the country.
The assembly is open to the public and is one of 891 which has been set up in the capital alone. Many more meetings are taking place in cities, towns and villages across the country for a 2-week period. With Venezuela going through one of its most difficult periods in its modern history, these participatory meetings are crucial.
These people have suffered a lot, but we are not going to loot. We have the tools, the plan, to continue the fight. Despite the necessities and with the expensive prices, we are not going to give up. The government has to review some issues, but we are not going to give up.
The first national plan, or Plan de la Patria, was launched in 2012 by Venezuela's late leader Hugo Chavez, as a guide for what the government's main socialist objectives should be. It is just one example of how participatory democracy has flourished under the Bolivarian Revolution. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
And we'll be back very soon. Stay with us. President Donald Trump's reported racist remarks about several countries have continued to generate angry reactions in many parts of the world. South Africa says it is to issue a diplomatic protest. And 186 personalities and organizations in the Caribbean are issuing a statement that declares Trump persona non grata in the region. The statement, already published by Telesur and several other outlets, will be formally launched at a news conference in the coming hours. President Juan Manuel Santos has activated the Hercules Joint Task Force in the area of Tumaco, the biggest military operation in many years, with 9,000 members of the army and police. Analysts are criticizing the government for increasing its operation without providing any social guarantees to the communities.
Operation Hercules will be activated in 10 municipalities in Nariño, according to Colombia's president. This will help fight illegal organizations and will return peace to the area's inhabitants.
This force and its strength must be channeled against all the organizations who threaten the country's calm.
Analysts warn that this operation will bring many risks. On the one hand, it will deepen militarization in between the post-agreement period. On the other hand, investment will be directed to improve armed forces in an area where people haven't seen the presence of the state.
It is a mistake by the government to give priority to repression and military forces instead of keep to the obligation has on social, political and institutional issues, the call for peace agreement.
Tumaco is one of the municipalities where Operation Hercules will take place. The homicide rates in this zone is 3 times higher than in the rest of Colombia. Poverty and unemployment rates are above 75% and around 23,000 hectares of coca are planted there.
It is impossible to keep this idea of achieving progress and peace only by military means, without social investment, social reformation, and without supporting the reincorporation of ex-combatants, in which they get the guarantee of a better social and economic life.
In Nariño's jurisdiction, the national government is engaged in forced elimination and simultaneously voluntary substitution of illegal crops. With a notorious imbalance between these two policies, it moved thousands of public force officers to support forced elimination and just 4 delegates for the voluntary substitution program.
Without a doubt, there are international elements at play here. North American pressure pushes for conflict more than dialogues, and this weakens the possibility of a peace agreement and may take the government down a negative road.
9,000 representatives from public forces are already arriving to the Colombian Pacific coast. Meanwhile, people from this territory wonder when doctors, teachers, and opportunities will arrive.
We now go to Argentina, where workers from the national system of public media held a festival to denounce the mass firings of workers from public television, national radio, and the National News Agency. More details in the following report.
With slogans like "Fewer news is censorship" and "No more public media firings," protesters demanded the reinstatement of 32 laid-off workers.
We convened an assembly of public media with TV Pública, Radio Nacional and Telam, stopping all activities in all 3 institutions for the first time in history. We did this to show solidarity and to organize through our union. Si prueba, we declare ourselves under alert and in permanent assembly, using this festival as one way to fight back.
Gerardo Masochi, the delegate from Radio Nacional, warned that his institution has greatly reduced its editorial line, as well as domestic and foreign coverage. These measures equate to a disappearance of content.
They are silencing one of the most diverse voices available on national radio. In spite of it being government-backed, workers were pushing to have all voices be heard. Laying off workers and diminishing broadcast options, that is censorship.
Just like other state-owned media, TV Pública did not evade these cutbacks, persecution and harassment by the government. Their delegate, Agustín Lequi, denounced that authorities want to start a war on the institution.
Last week, a virulent attack started by different media that stand against public workers, demonizing, extorting and intimidating us. This past Monday and Tuesday, we had police in our buildings, with patrolmen menacingly overseeing us. These actions undermine the media's functions and aggravates us.
With no way of arguing for salary increases for almost 2 years, public media workers will continue to show their strength in defense of their rights and stand against firings and adjustments within the administration.
Bolivia has been reveling in the festivities of the Aculicu National Day, the day of coca leaf chewing. It is a practice that has been performed by farmers and indigenous people for centuries. Our correspondent Freddy Morales tells us more.
Hundreds of coca producers from the Yungas zones of La Paz together with the highest authorities in the country, celebrated the day of Acuico outside the government palace.
The coca leaf means life and identity for the Yungas, because for centuries it was the only resource that we had from our ancestors.
Hundreds of farming families in Bolivia depend on the coca leaf as a lifeline.
The coca leaf means life and identity for the Yungas, because for centuries it was the only resource that we have from our ancestors.
During the campaign against drug trafficking in 1961, the United Nations declared the traditional chewing of coca leaves illegal and gave countries 25 years to retire the tradition.
Previous governments considered the coca leaf illegal. However, in 2011, the government managed to lift the ban on coca leaves in Bolivia. But there are conditions to follow, and we're working on the new general law for the coca leaf.
Success didn't come easy. The Bolivian government has worked tirelessly to get the United Nations to reverse its stance and lift its long-standing ban.
We stand for the coca leaf, as it is our identity, and we are defending the dignity of our nation. And we stand united as a Bolivian people. Unfortunately, the United Nations banned the coca leaf in 1961 and gave us 25 years to end our tradition. That is something we will never forget.
Bolivia is the third largest coca producer on the continent, after Peru and Colombia. According to the new law, almost all traditional purposes of the coca leaf are legal. That means Bolivians can continue to practice their rituals and tap the medicinal, herbal, and nutritional qualities of this centuries-old commodity.
And we'll be back very soon. Stay with us. On this day, 89 years ago, one of the greatest civil rights leaders of all time, Martin Luther King Jr., was born. Let's revisit some of the main events of his life.
At this time, I have the honor to present to you the moral leader of our nation. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
These revered words still echo in the minds of millions of people across the world when they think of civil rights. Talking from the podium of the historic March to Washington on 28th of August 1963, Martin Luther King evoked an entire generation of Americans to get up and fight for their rights.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
After the modern civil rights movement began in the mid-1950s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. emerged as its major national voice. Under his leadership, the tactics of non-cooperation with unjust laws, persistent demonstrations, and non-violent responses to physical assault became the guiding principles of a mass movement designed to arouse the nation's conscience. Martin Luther King Jr. received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 for his advocacy of non-violence.
After contemplation, I conclude that this award, which I receive on behalf of that movement, is a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral questions of our time. The need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to violence and oppression.
Another milestone in Martin Luther King's fight for civil rights came with the Selma to Montgomery March, joined by more than 2,500 people, which demanded the African American community be allowed to register to vote. But the march attempting to reach Montgomery, the capital of Alabama, was twice brutally repressed by dozens of state troopers, badly injuring 50 marchers. TV cameras recorded the assault of what came to be known as Bloody Sunday, and in the next 2 days, 80 cities around the United States protested in support of the Selma demonstrators. A week later, President Lyndon Johnson finally introduced voting legislation, approved and signed by Congress on August 6, 1965, as the Voting Rights Act.
Now let's have a look at some other news from around the world.
A mezzanine floor inside the Indonesia Stock Exchange Tower has collapsed, injuring more than 70 people and forcing for a chaotic evacuation. The building is a part of two-tower complex which was the target of a suicide bombing by Islamic militants in September 2000. But police ruled out a bomb as a cause of Monday's incident. At least 35 people have been killed and more than 60 wounded in a twin suicide bombing in central Baghdad on Monday. The attack targeted Aviation Square, a commercial area of Baghdad. It was carried out by two men who detonated vests packed with explosives. The U.S. state of Hawaii has been told it did not have reasonable safeguards in place to prevent the false missile alert that caused a wave of panic on Saturday. Ajit Pai, chairman of America's Federal Communications Commission, said the error was absolutely unacceptable. The incident happened when an employee at the State Emergency Management Agency pushed the wrong button, sending an emergency alert warning of an imminent ballistic missile attack to Hawaii's residents. French dairy group Lactalis is recalling 12 million boxes of powdered baby milk in 83 countries after a salmonella health scare hit one of its factories. The French finance minister ordered a recall of the baby milk boxes.
Lactalis will take back all baby milk products manufactured at Crown, regardless of their production date, from whatever is being sold and in particular from supermarkets and chemists. The aim of this radical step is simple: to avoid delays, problem in sorting batches, and the risk of human error.
In northeast Turkey, a Pegasus Airlines plane skid off the runway at Trabzon airport and ended up halfway down a steep slope into the Black Sea. But its 162 passengers, 2 pilots and 4 cabin crew members were unhurt. The incident happened on last Saturday night. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in India for a 6-day visit with the intention of strengthening bilateral relations. Netanyahu aims to bolster trade and defense ties during his trip. He is accompanied by a 130-member delegation drawn from the Infocom, technology, agriculture and defense sectors.
Palestine's PLO party has been holding a cabinet meeting to discuss how the country can move forward after U.S. President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Our Gaza correspondent Nur Harasin files this report.
Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the Hamas movement here in the Gaza Strip, has sent a letter to the PLO this morning informing them that Hamas will not be joining the PLO cabinet meeting that was held in Ramallah today and will continue until tomorrow. The same thing happened and came from the political party, the resistance party, Islamic Jihad here in the Gaza Strip. The decisions that came from Hamas and the Islamic Jihad comes after the PLO agreed to hold cabinet meeting in Ramallah to discuss the recognition that came from the U.S. for Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Hamas and Islamic Jihad said in a statement that from now on they only believe in armed and popular resistance as a way to solve all the problems related with the Palestinian cause. However, the PLO do believe that the international community, the Arab League and the other countries will step in and help the Palestinian cause in other peaceful ways. They also do believe, and they also said it today, that they will go for the UN to ask for a full membership for the Palestinian state in the UN, and such decision could empower the status of Palestine around the world.
That was Nur Harasin from Gaza. Defiant, brave, and mature beyond her 16 years, Ahed Tamimi has become the face of the Palestinian solidarity movement around the world. Journalist, activist, and host of the Empire Files, Abby Martin, went to Palestine to interview Ahed and the Tamimi family. Let's take a look at a clip from that episode.
بس أنا بخاف على أهلي إنه يموتوا، بخاف أخسر حدا من اللي بحبهم، يعني أصحابي، كل أهلي بالبلاد هاي معرضين كلنا إنه نموت بأي لحظة، يمكن هسه أنا أشوف جندي جاي يقتلني.
Recently, the struggle for Palestinian human rights gained international attention surrounding a new icon of resistance, 16-year-old Ahed Tamimi. On December 15, a video of Tamimi slapping an Israeli soldier outside of her home went viral. But what isn't seen on the video is that just moments before, Israeli forces shot her 15-year-old cousin Mohammed point blank in the face with a rubber bullet, causing severe internal bleeding. A few days later, Ahed was violently arrested in the middle of the night in a raid by dozens of soldiers.
My colleague Soyini Gray asked Abby Martin about the reality behind the media portrayal of Ahed Tamimi.
Well, of course, every time the mainstream media talks about Palestine-Israel, there's a huge swell of missing context to the situation. Of course, other than the clip that we just saw, where her 15-year-old cousin Mohammed was shot literally moments before this incident that you see on the viral video happened, there's a huge missing context here, right? The biggest question is, why were the soldiers there? The media is painting it as maybe, similarly to a police officer just patrolling around a neighborhood and a kid aggressively attacking them. Well, here's the real situation. This village, Nabi Saleh, I went there. It's horrifying. I mean, it is being flanked by huge settlements that are illegal. It is under illegal Israeli military occupation. It is under Israeli military law. Under this law, you cannot hold a flag. You cannot be in groups of 10 people. Political organizing is illegal. Political parties are illegal. So we're talking about a family so steadfast in their resistance that they were even fighting the British colonial occupation. This is a family who, her mom was almost permanently handicapped from a bullet from Israeli forces. Her father tortured in prison, almost lost his life. Several cousins have been shot and killed. They are trying to ethnically cleanse the village. There are settlers there who are armed militia who constantly shoot, harass, throw rocks at these villagers. This is a flashpoint of the resistance of Palestinian resistance. I mean, this is where the fight is happening.
And with this, we've come to the end of this morning news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
During all this time, they have been with us to report the realities shivering the world, supporting and sharing our victories. Due to their work, we are currently in more places and will still be in the voice of the people. The news source from Latin America and the Caribbean. A sign of resistance to hatred